What If? Hello everyone, I'm Joe Squared, and today I'm going to be talking about What If. Of course, this came out a little while ago, it's kind of old news, everyone's seen it, but I never did watch it. I'm a bit hesitant with animations and stuff sometimes. But with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness on the horizon, I thought I kind of need to watch this because I knew there was a Doctor Strange episode, and friend Joe told me to, look into it as well. And apparently this is all canon in this show as well. So I was like, you know what? It's another part of the MCU jigsaw. I should watch it and, try and understand what's going on with it. Now, What If is exploring minor changes, minor tweaks to MCU stories that we are familiar with, that we have seen in movies, and they are changing it slightly and showing how that can have like a dramatic effect in the entire story of the MCU. And the show sticks with characters we've all seen, so it doesn't really bring in anyone new, like nothing we haven't seen. And it mostly keeps all the voice actors as well, which is really cool. I wasn't sure they'd be able to do that, but majority of the thing, they actually keep all the same voice actors. It's only like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. that they couldn't get back. The animation in the show is really cool as well. I was quite a big fan of that. It reminds me of the animation from the Telltale video games, like The Walking Dead. It's like that, but except it looks better, runs smoother, because obviously in those games it can look a little bit laggy and stuff, like you can't quite keep up with it, but here it looked very clean. And there are 9 episodes to this show, all telling a different alternate story, and they include Peggy becoming Captain Carter rather than Steve Rogers becoming Captain America, T'Challa becoming Star-Lord, the Avengers being picked off and assassinated before they can form as the Avengers, Doctor Strange losing Christine and trying to fix that problem, zombies, really cool, they just went all out and showed like what would happen if the Avengers turned into zombies, Killmonger rescuing Tony Stark so that he never became Iron Man, Thor being an only child so he throws a party on Earth and he's kind of spoiled, Ultron winning in Age of Ultron and then ultimately getting all the stones, which then leads to him killing everyone in the universe. And then our character called the Watcher, who is sort of the narrator of this show, voiced very, very well by Jeffrey Wright. It's a case of if the Watcher was no longer, watching over the multiverses, which is what his job is. Whether that's an actual Marvel character, I'm not sure. If they've just made him for What If because they wanted someone to narrate, I'm not sure, but that's a cool concept and a cool final episode that they had. Each episode tells an intriguing enough story for sure, especially when you've watched all the movies, so every single plot line you are intrigued to see why it's different and how it's going to turn out. But for some of the episodes it's not ultimately that interesting the way it turns out. Sometimes it feels a little samey, or sometimes it feels like the story was a little bit pointless, like it didn't really show anything that was ultimately that different and that groundbreaking compared to what we've seen before. And each episode feels like it's its own thing, obviously, because sometimes you get recurring characters but it's set in a different universe, so it just kind of feels like every story is a one-off. But ultimately by the final episode, it does actually lead to sort of a climax in a sense. It's like this has all been happening and now all these characters from different universes are being picked for one final task, and they got to join up and team up and fight a threat. Of course, the threat is the fact that the multiverse is at risk, so that's quite intriguing, especially with upcoming movies and stuff we've seen recently. But for me, out of all the episodes, the standout episode has to be Doctor Strange's episode. This is a very intriguing idea. The plot basically switches things where when he was in the car and had his accident and broke his hands and all this, and then he became Doctor Strange, master of the mystic arts. Instead, he had Christine in the car and she dies, and therefore he does go to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but he decides to use his power instead to try and rewind time and save her. But we learn this event in this universe of Christine dying is what's defined as an absolute point, and it has to happen in order for Strange to become who he does in that episode and in that universe. So it has to happen, and no matter how much he tries to change it, you cannot break that. And when he eventually does, it has drastic effects on the universe and the multiverse in general. I think the reason that one intrigued me the most is because I'm loving this whole multiverse theme they're now going for, especially with No Way Home that we've just seen, and with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness on the horizon. It's a very cool concept to me. I do like the idea of multiverses and how they can branch out and affect each other. So we learned some new things in this episode, which I think was cool. We learned new things about the multiverse and, you know, a point in time that cannot be changed, cannot be altered because it is pivotal. Whereas I think a lot of the other episodes, they didn't really teach us much new things. They just say, oh, what if this person won instead of this person? What if this person died? Blah, blah, blah. But it was still cool, but this one felt like it had the most substance to it and like the most at stake, and it was actually the most sort of emotional out of all of them. It was telling a bit more of a sadder story compared to the others, which a lot of the time are trying to be a bit more comedic, even though they don't pull their punches with some pretty brutal, you know, character deaths and whatnot. I thought T'Challa becoming Star-Lord as well, it's a weird one on paper. You know, why would T'Challa become Star-Lord rather than Peter Quill? But it was a very interesting episode, actually, and I really liked all the characters in it. You had like Thanos, and he was good. Like, he didn't try to get all the Infinity Stones and do the snap, which is very interesting. And what was really nice about this episode was Chadwick Boseman was doing the voice for it, which was just nice. Just great to hear his voice again. Overall, this was a well animated, well acted, and pretty great concept for a show, as it rewrote stories and characters, and, you know, as well as being pretty brutal at the same time, killing off characters numerous times in some episodes, you know, and it was certainly interesting, but a lot of the time I felt like it did play it safe in a sense with the characters it was using and whatnot, and some stuff, you know, just the story didn't really get better as it went on in a sense. You know, the episode would start off intriguing, but then didn't really lead to anything all that exciting, so you kind of left a bit like underwhelmed by the end of it. You know, it's still worth the watch. You don't lose your focus or attention, but it ultimately a lot of the time doesn't lead to anything by the end of the episodes that really goes, you know, has you going wow. Like I said, the show didn't really introduce any new characters, but it was interesting enough with the characters we know in a sense, because it's cool to see an alternate outcome for these characters that we've known for so long. And, you know, majority of the time they had the same actors playing it, which is what made it quite interesting and cool to watch. Overall, I would give What If a 7.5 out of 10. This is a good show and one worth watching, especially if you're up on all the MCU stuff. I'm not sure how important it is to watch it, but it probably is worth watching because of the multiversal elements and whatnot, especially with, you know, the way this new phase of MCU movies is heading. If you've seen it, let me know what you think about it. Of course, I'm very late to this, but I wanted to bring out a review because I think it's worth talking about. Thank you all very much for watching. I've been Joe Squared. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you're new, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.